Ecclesiastes. The season is set for everything. Time for every experience under heaven. Time for dancing and a time for wailing. A time for birthing and a time for dying. A time for speaking and a time for silence. A time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service today with a recitation of psalms and quotations from our 3,000-year tradition, attesting to the linking of Shirley's life with our tradition, with the people of Israel, and with the eternity of God. First, and I'll give a bit of a warning about this, I'd like to begin with a psalm that Shirley specifically asked for. Favorite psalm first, it's the 139th. I'll just point out to you that it's a very deep and rich psalm, and the Hebrew is not so straightforward to get into good, clean, meaningful English. So I'm looking at a few different places, so forgive me if it gets a little funky. But this psalm was of special meaning to Shirley. L'Menatzeach, David Mizmor, Adonai Chakartani V'Teidah. For the lead player, a David psalm, Lord, you searched me and you know me. Hayadata Shivti V'Kumi Bantal L'Re'i Merachok. It is you who know when I sit and I rise. You fathom my thoughts from afar. Barchi V'Riv'i Zerita V'Chol Drachai Hizkanta. My path and my lair you winnow, and with all my ways you are familiar. Ki ein milah bilshon hein Adonai yadata kula. For there is no word on my tongue but that you, O Lord, wholly know it. Achorba kedem sartani, batashet alai kapecha. From behind and in front you shaped me and set your palm upon me. Li'adat mimeni niskeva lo uchala. Knowledge is too wondrous for me. High above, I cannot attain it. Ana ilech meruchecha ve'ana mipanecha evrach. This is, by the way, the part that Shirley really likes. Where can I go away from your spirit, and where from before you flee? Im yisak shamayim shamata ve'atzia sheol hineka. If I soar to the heavens, you are there. If I bed down in Sheol, you are there as well. Esach anfei shachar eshkena ba'acharit yam. If I take wing with the dawn, if I dwell at the ends of the sea, Gam sham yadcha tancheni v'tochazeni yiminecha. There too your hand leads me, and your right hand seizes me. Va'omar achoshech yeshufeni v'layla or ba'deni. Should I say, yes, darkness will swathe me, and night will be light for me. Gam choshech lo yachashecha yachashich mimecha v'layla kayom ya'ir chachashecha ora. Darkness itself will not darken for you, and the night will light up like the day. The dark and the light will be one. Yata kanita hilyotai tesukeni beveten imi. For you created my innermost parts, wove me in my mother's womb. Odacha al ki noraot nifleti niflaim ma'asecha nafshi yadad ma'od. I acclaim you, for awesomely I am set apart. Wondrous are your acts, and my being deeply knows it. Lo nichad atzmi mimeka asher asiti baseter, asher useti baseter, ukamti betachtiyot aretz. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in a secret place, knitted in utmost depths. Galmi ra'u einecha v'al sifracha, ulam yikatevu yamim yutzaru v'lo echad bahem. My unformed shape your eyes did see, and in your book all was written down. The days were fashioned, not one of them did lack. V'li ma yakru re'echa el me'atzmu roshehem. As for me, how weighty are your thoughts, O God, how numerous their sum. Esfarem mechol yabun hakitzoti v'odi imach. Should I count them, they will be more than the sand. I awake and am still with you. Here we're going to skip a few verses that Shirley did not like. And if you're interested, you'll go look at Psalm 109, verse 19, and you'll see what that part was. Okreni el v'da levavi, v'chaneni v'da sar'afai. Search me, God, and know my heart. Probe me and know my mind. U're'ei im derech otzev bi, v'cheni b'derech olam. And see if there is a vexing way in me, and lead me on the eternal way. So again, that was specifically requested by Shirley, and favorite part, where can I go that God can't find me? Paraphrasing. So I'd like to add a couple of other thoughts from our tradition that are of my choosing. This particular one is from the Talmud in Megillah. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Elazar said the name of Rabbi Chanina. Sadiq Ave L'Dorave. When a righteous person is lost, they are lost to their generation. Mashal Adam She'avdalo Margalit. It's comparable to a person who lost a pearl. Kol Makom Shehi Margalit Shma, Lo Avda El Vala. Wherever that pearl is, it's still a pearl. It's lost only to its owner. So it is for us. Shirley is gone for us, but wherever she is, she's still a pearl. And one more selection that I'd like to read you, which comes from the Talmud again in Brachot. Ashrei mi shegadal b'Torah, v'amalo b'Torah, v'oseh nachat ruach le'otzro, v'gadal b'shem tov, v'niftar b'shem tov min ha'olam. Blessed is one who was reared in Torah, who labored in Torah, who pleased our Creator, who lived with a good reputation, and who departed this world with a good name.
Shirley brings many of us together now after her passing, as she has brought us together during her lifetime. We all know Shirley as a very beautiful person, a person, as we say in English, Segal and Salai, a person who was acceptable and beloved by Hashem, by God in heaven, as well as people down here. I'm not going to deliver a long eulogy. I'm going to be very brief because, as we say in Pirkei Avot, Emor ma'at v'aseh harveh. Shirley was a person of more deeds than just talk. And Shirley comes from a different time. I have not seen this time while I'm here already over 40 years. She came from a place when Glens Falls and the whole surrounding north area, and you can say about her Ar HaTzafon, which means the hidden light, or it also means the light of the north. And everything above Albany is north. She came from a community, inspired by people. I don't know exactly who they were. She once explained to me a number of things, and father and mother, and she was for a while my grandmother, and I don't recall everything she told me. But she comes from a place that had a very strong feeling, emotion, a burning fire for Yiddishkeit. She had a flame in her heart. And she loved every mitzvah. She would love every penny she would put in a pushka. And this love was felt by her family, was felt by her students. She taught many students in the Hebrew schools here. And I'm not a family member, and I am not a direct student, but as far away as Albany, we could feel that there was a person here who really cared and loved Yiddishkeit. And she didn't do it just for herself. She shared it. She shared it with so many people in direct and indirect ways, in ways that people knew and recognized directly from her, and also in other ways. I mean, she would sell the chametz she would send me a long list of 15 different people with all kinds of addresses that you probably didn't even know that she's selling their chametz, but she did. And she did it like this now, with a smile. And she suffered a lot towards the end of her life, and we haven't seen her that close and often, but whenever I came by, my wife and I would come by, she always had a smile and something good to say, and she really was a shining light. And in Hebrew, her name was Shana Leah, and Shana means beautiful, and she was a beautiful person. She was a beautiful person physically, she was a beautiful person spiritually, and she was a very inspired person. And the pasuk, the verse in the Torah, the rabbi mentioned a lot of beautiful verses and selections, and Shirley had a feeling for Tehillim. Some people just mumble and recite the Tehillim, but she said it with heart, and I know that. I didn't know this was her particular favorite, but she lived with Tehillim. She really lived and loved Tehillim. And there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, and perhaps personifies or captures Shirley's attitude, her approach, her personality, and that is Sameach nefesh avdecha. Make rejoice the heart of your servant. Ki elecha Hashem, because to you, God, nafshi yesa, I rise my soul. And she really believed strongly in her Judaism. She believed in menschlichkeit. She was a real, true mensch, a person who was beloved and accepted and understood by everybody, and not everything was so easy all the time, but she always carried things in a very nice way. I want to think of Shirley as a relay runner. You know, she came from a different time when there were probably many more like her. At least certainly she was inspired and came from that place. And she tried to share it with everybody. And she carried that torch. She carried the Ner Mitzvah, the light of Mitzvah, the Torah Or, and the light of Torah. She carried it and she ran with it. And we have to continue that light that she left, that legacy that she left. Certainly, I know the grandchildren, but one day I'm in Maimonides in the school there, and all of a sudden a group of students come in, and I didn't know where they're from, and they're from a Jewish organization, and why are they there? They're going around different cities, and they came to put on film. And this boy, 6 of them, or 5 of them, and this boy tells me, I have a grandmother here. I said, really, you have a grandmother here? Yeah, Shirley Kanofsky. And I could see where her spirit and her love and her caring carries over to further generations. And so all of us, she was like a savta, a bubby to many of us, obviously not physically or biologically, but in spirit. And we should all take some of that joy and that smile and that caring and that heart of hers. And in a small way, we can compare ourselves to her. And in our own small ways, do another mitzvah, do a mitzvah with feeling, with concern, with love. And certainly that is a Sameach nefesh avdecha, ki elecha Hashem nafshi yesa, Yeh zikra baruch, her memory is a blessing.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Rubin. You were a special person in Shirley's life, and I'm very glad that you were here to share your memories with us. Our second eulogy will be from Shirley's son, Michael.
It is at a gathering like this that you can gauge the impact that someone has had on others during their life. And for the number of people here, to honor my mother's memory, the impact she had on others is telling. For all of the reasons you are here today, and having had the privilege of being Shirley Kanofsky's son, I had the opportunity to experience at first hand what all of you know and feel when the thought of Mom comes to your minds. Mom always had strong convictions about doing things for herself. As Mom's health worsened more and more over time, she began to allow me to do more and more things to help her. Never at any moment did I ever perceive this help I offered as a burden or inconvenience. Instead, the only feeling I truly ever felt was honor. Conveying love and kindness to others is what made Mom the most happy. And if all of you here convey those qualities when dealing with others, my mother will have attained her true life's desire. In closing, what I'm about to ask was a direct request from my mom. When her casket is to leave this building, it was her wish to be escorted, surrounded by what she loved most in life, people. So please, and as space and safety will permit, please come and surround and escort her casket as it leaves this building to begin the journey to its final resting place. Thank you all so very much.
We'll have one more eulogy this afternoon. This one will be for me. I'll just comment before I really begin that I'm going to demonstrate this morning, discussing with the family a little earlier why it is that I generally give the last eulogy, which is that if people are going to say the same thing, I'd rather be the one who's repeating and not steal someone's thunder. I will also say I give myself a little credit for having some of the same thoughts as Rabbi Rubin. You'll hear some of the same themes come up. Reshit Rabbah, the major Midrashic collection on the book of Genesis, asks the following. Ma bein mitat kenim lemitat na'arim. What's the difference between the death of the old and the death of the young? Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Haner hazeh, b'sha'ah shukava me'elav, yafeh lo v'yafeh l'tilav. B'sha'ah she'eino kava me'elav, ra lo v'ra l'tilav. Rabbi Yehuda answered, consider this candle. When it burns out of its own accord, it's good for itself and good for the wick. When it does not burn out of its own accord, it's not good for the candle or the wick. This is by far not the only time that our tradition compares human life to a candle. Proverbs 20:27, which I mentioned to the family yesterday when we met, reads, Ner Hashem nishmat adam, chofes kol chagrei vatem. The human soul is God's candle, exposing each person's innermost self. I'll give you one more. It's a pun in Hebrew from Kala Rabati, a Talmudic tractate discussing some aspects of marriage. And because I've used this at weddings, I happen to have a little visual aid. So this one goes like this. Amar Rabba, lama nikrash ma isha shehi eish. Rabba said, why is a woman called Isha? Because her essence is fire, Eish. Trust me, that's great for weddings. There's more to it. The wonderful thing about a candle is, of course, the light and the warmth it radiates while it burns. The very sad thing about a candle is that whether it burns out itself or is snuffed before its time, no candle burns forever. The transcendent thing about some special candles is that, like the shamas on Hanukkah, they share their flame with other candles, which may in turn light other candles to produce a glow no single candle could provide. And that sacred flame can continue burning in all the candles it ignites long after the initial candle has burnt out. Shirley Kanofsky was a very special candle. Her fuel was exhausted and her flame has burnt out. But the fires that lit up Shirley's soul, the fires of Yiddishkeit and Menschlichkeit, Jewishness and humanity, those fires are not gone. Shirley's warm heart left glowing embers all over Glens Falls and throughout the North Country. And it is now for each of us who was warmed by Shirley's glow to determine whether we will fan those embers back into a scorching flame within our own soul candle, or let her light fade away. Let me share with you a few details of Shirley's life before I get to some things that she wanted me to tell you today. Shirley Aronson Kanofsky, Shana Leah, was born right here in Glens Falls on November 5th, 1931, to Barney and Gusta Aronson. She was the middle child between sisters Hilda and Paula. Remarkably, as a youngster, Shirley largely stayed with her grandparents. The remarkable part is it was not because her parents wanted rid of her, but because she saw that her grandparents were getting frail and needed her help in the house. She studied bookkeeping in high school, graduating in 1949. Around that time, she met and was completely mesmerized by a charming young fellow from Chicago. And by the way, that description didn't come from Sid. Many times told me that when she met Sid, swept off her feet. Shirley and Sid married on January 1st, 1950. Sid told me yesterday it was an easy date to remember. The Talmud says in Sanhedrin, Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, L'chol yesh tmura, chutz me'eshet urim. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman said, there's something in my translation. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman said, there's a replacement for every loss, except the wife of one's youth. Over the years, Shirley worked in family businesses, from her parents' drugstore to Northway Hotel and Northway Communications with Sid, putting her bookkeeping and interpersonal skills to good use. Meanwhile, she kept house at home, being a doting mother to Drean, Alaha Shalom, and Lyn and Michael, and finding the time somehow to attend all their school and social activities, cherishing walking to shul with them. Lyn remembers particularly that when President Kennedy was killed on a Friday afternoon 50 years ago this last November, Shirley consoled her children and talked with them into the night by the glow of their Shabbos candles that night. In the early 80s, Shirley was a caregiver to her parents when they needed it. Shirley was no less loving with her grandchildren, including her step-grandchildren who know her affectionately as Savta Shirley. As if business and family weren't enough to keep her occupied, Shirley was very active in Congregation Shari Tefillah, serving on the board, working bingo, helping in the kitchen, participating in our Chaver Kadisha, our Sacred Burial Society, in the Sisterhood, including serving as its president, visiting in the hospital religiously, and I do mean the pun there. It's a very deep and great midah mitzvah that she was filling in visiting people in the hospital, Jews and non-Jews alike. And perhaps dearest of all to her heart, teaching in the Hebrew school for some 20 years. I don't know the exact date of two major turning points in Shirley's life, but they involve two of my predecessors at Shari Tefillah. Rabbi Herbert Silverberg, whom Shirley described as a gentle soul, gave a sermon on some Shabbos in which he said, if you don't keep Shabbos, begin now. If you don't keep kosher, begin now. While walking home from shul afterwards with her cousin Harry Bobbin, Shirley decided she would do just that. And here I can't resist telling you a little of Harry's side of the story, although she would tell it much better. But I will do my best Harry impression. Harry likes to say, I was right with her when the lightning struck her. Another foot and it could have been me. information right there. I'm just quoting. Obviously, Shirley was already in shul to hear that sermon, but from that day, the depth of her Judaism grew and grew, leading to her involvement with Chabad and the extended Reuben family in particular. Shirley remembers Rabbi Reuben's sister, Esther Chanowitz, teaching her Frumkeit, which I'll translate for those who don't speak some Yiddish, a little bit simplistically, but as Jewish observance. Frumkeit is a ladder, and that is to say, you don't have to start at the top, but you grab hold of whatever rung you can hang on to right now. And over time, you work your way up. The second turning point came when Rabbi Jerry Solomon asked Shirley to begin teaching, and more importantly, when he helped her find the courage to try. Very typically of Shirley, she didn't think she had it in her. There were better people available, and Rabbi Solomon said, "We need you, and you can do it." And it was a big moment for Shirley. Shirley said of Rabbi Solomon, "He was big in my life." Reflecting further, she added, "People come and people go. Some leave a big impression." It probably never occurred to her that we would say the same of her today, especially in the loving impression of the joy of Jewish life that she left with so many of our school children, dancing and singing through the school day. In fact, when Shirley first became ill, and we rushed to honor her for her service in the school, not knowing at that point what a fight she would give to her cancer, Shirley's immediate response when we told her, "You've got to come, we're going to honor you and add your name to a plaque," was, "What did I do that was so special?" Shirley said of her years teaching, "Every kid was my kid." That brings me to some things that Shirley wanted you to hear. Shirley wants you to know, this is a quote, "She was a hard-boiled egg who fought to the last nail." She wants to thank her doctors, nurses, aides, housekeepers, the food service people, and the hospital clergy. If I'm not mistaken, I saw her today. She said everyone's outstanding, and she especially mentioned Dr. Galani and her PA, Donna Boss. Shirley liked to say, "She's my boss." She wants to thank her family for their support during her illness, including Lyn, Michael, Hilda and Betty, cousins Harry Bobbin and Sonny Buckman. And Shirley said of Sid, "He does the best he can for me. He does so much to help me." Shirley asked that her body be taken down to Albany for her tahara, the ritual preparation and purification for her burial. The reason was that she wanted her friends on our Chaver Kadisha here to remember her as she was in life and not in death. Her words to Francine Torah, head of our women's Chaver Kadisha, are, "You, Francine, are a piece of gold." So you should know that it's nothing against our Chaver Kadisha that she wanted to go down to Albany. On her deathbed, Shirley remembered the blessings of parents and grandparents and sent blessings to her grandchildren, David and Avi with their wives and children, and Aaron and Megan. She wants you all, and by this I mean you all, not specifically the grandchildren. She wants you all to know the Eibishter looked out for her, and she wants to tell you not to give up on people. See the best in everyone. I want to tell you for context on this last remark that it came from a woman who at the moment she spoke these words weighed in as a 92-pound shell of a person, weakened, bedridden, hospitalized, and aware that her time was coming to an end. She was suffering. She had every right to complain. I want you to know that was the context in which she said, "Every minute of the day is a new miracle." The Talmud mentions in Sukkah and in Sanhedrin that there are 36 righteous people who merit seeing the Shekhinah, which in Talmudic usage, those of you who know a little Kabbalah, means something else there. In Talmud, it means simply God's manifest presence. From this passing remark grew a legend that at any given time there are 36 people living who are so righteous and pure that for their sake God maintains the world despite its many sins and failings. These people often suffer, even beyond the suffering of their fellow Jews in history, because of their great empathy for their fellows. No one knows who they are, and of course among their virtues is such humility that they would never realize they're special or admit to it if someone suggested it to them. These 36 are known in Hebrew as tzadikim nistarim, hidden saints, or in Yiddish as lamed vavnikim, 36ers. Should I tell you now that Shirley Kanofsky is a tzadeket nistara? Of course not. I know Shirley well enough to know that she had faults alongside her many tremendous midot. She was not superhuman. She was something much better than a mythical, mystical, superhumanly just saint. Shirley was not born special. She was an ordinary human being, just like you and me, who made herself special, which means that her example is within our power to follow. One of Shirley's favorite prayers to teach children was the first prayer we say upon waking in the morning. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati, b'chamla rabban munatecha. I thank you, living and eternal King, for returning my soul to me in mercy. Great is your faith. And Shirley, the King's faith was rewarded. On the 10th of June, which was the 12th of Sivan, in the 5,774th year of the world, Shirley's soul returned not to her, but to its maker for safekeeping. Shirley's soul was not a flickering little wax candle, but a mighty torch, which is now passed to us. May we each nurture the flames of Shirley's worthy midot, her good qualities, in our own hearts and our own lives, and may they add to the strength of our own soul candle's light. As soon as I get my breath, we'll continue our service with El Malay, a prayer of memory for Shirley. So I'll ask you all to please rise. El Malay Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Ametzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Toharim, Kezar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Shana Leah Bat Dover V'Gittel Shalcha L'Olama, B'Gan Eden Tei Menuchata, Ana Bal Rachamim, Hastireh B'Seter Knafecha L'Olamim, Utzror B'Tzrochem Nishmatach, Adonai U'Nachlatach, V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavach, V'Nomar Amen. El Malay Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Shirley Aronson Kanofsky, Shana Leah Bat Dover V'Gittel, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You can be seated. The mysteries of life and death are beyond human understanding. We are perplexed and overwhelmed when pain and anguish befall those whom we love. In sorrow, confronted by death, which has taken Shirley from our midst, we feel our frailty. Like morning dew, we glisten for an hour or two and disappear into a new day. Ra'ei Yisrael, Shepherd of Israel, guide us, your flock, with love and compassion. In our grief and desolation we grow distant. Do not abandon us, but draw us closer to you. Grant solace and comfort to those who mourn. May they sustain each other with the blessing of memory, the memory of the life of their beloved Shirley. In the valley of the shadow of death, beside the still waters and green pastures, you, Adonai, are our shepherd. Be our strength, our shield, our guide, be our comfort throughout all our days. Let us conclude with Amen.
Amen.
Before we proceed to escort Shirley from this room and take our first steps towards the cemetery, let me give a little bit of advanced instruction. I don't know whether anything is dropping at the moment, but we may have some weather today. Pardon me. So much better to explain what will happen at the cemetery here in comfort than under falling raindrops. First of all, let me explain to you that the act of burial is known in Jewish tradition as chesed shel emet, true kindness, and is a great, great mitzvah. So you are all invited to participate directly in the burial in one or both of two parts. The first, which I'll come back to momentarily, is escorting to burial. In fact, from that comes the Hebrew name for burial, levaya. It's literally the escorting, not the burying that's referred to. And then secondly is the physical act of burying. Again, you are all invited to come to the cemetery if you are physically able, and to take part in the process of burial. To do that, there are some details about how we'll undertake that. Again, I'll explain them here, and depending on the weather, may refresh your memory there. These are the details regarding our use of the shovel. First of all, it's customary for each person to add at least 3 shovelfuls of earth that represents taking part fully. Customarily, for the first shovelful, you should turn the shovel over, which is to say that you'll use the convex side for the engineers, the wrong side for those who just know what a shovel looks like. And that indicates that we are not interested in being efficient and rushing the process along, but are reluctant to really mark the completion of Shirley's life, which of course we are, and indicates that we are engaged in special activity and not out digging in the garden. So for the first shovelful, you should turn the shovel over. Afterwards, you can return it to its normal usage. I'll recommend, assuming that we have most of the people who are here out at the cemetery, that you start with 3 shovelfuls, and if we need additional, some people may volunteer to add further. That way we'll make sure that everyone is able to participate. Secondly, regarding the shovel, please don't hand the shovel directly from one person to another, but return it into the earth so the next person can take it for themselves. As far as I'm aware, that's a little bit of Jewish superstition that we don't like to hand misfortune from one person to another. But nonetheless, that's our custom, so please try not to hand the shovel directly from one person to another, but insert it back into the mound of earth so the next person can take it themselves. Next, I'll mention that at the conclusion of burial, after we finish with further Amale and a Kaddish, I'll ask that all those who are not the immediate mourners form a parallel set of lines going out towards the cars or the exit of the cemetery, so that as the family, the mourners, are leaving the cemetery, we take the first earliest opportunity, because it's really at that moment of burial that they become formally mourners, to wish comfort. And I'll give some instructions about what's traditional to say out of the cemetery. 2 additional things. First of all, it was Shirley's wish that not only her pallbearers, whom I'll call up shortly, but that everyone escort her out. If you are close by and it won't interfere, you can actually touch the casket as it's going out. However, I caution you not to we want people tripping over each other, but just walking along behind the casket is sufficient. And in that way, and by the way, at least 3 steps if you're not able to go all the way is additional. And that way you are taking part in escorting Shirley to her grave. And secondly, Shirley, again, specifically wanted to ask that anyone who would like to add some thoughts in her memory, who didn't have the opportunity here during the service, is invited to share thoughts and memories of her at the Sudat Havra'ah, the meal of condolence that will follow the burial back at Shari Tefillah. If there's anyone who is not up to going to the cemetery, whether for physical or emotional reasons, you can go directly back to Shari Tefillah at 68 Bay Street and wait for us to return for the meal. And last note, I think, 2 more notes. First, at the synagogue, we'll have some water waiting outside. Those who come from the cemetery should rinse your hands before returning into the synagogue. If you go to the cemetery but you're not going back to the synagogue, you should take the earliest opportunity to rinse your hands wherever you go. That's a remnant of the sacrificial system of purity. And last note, but please pay close attention to this one. Our Shiva Minyanim will be held tonight, Sunday night, Monday and Tuesday at 7 p.m. With visiting hours continuing through 9. If you'd like to give condolences to the family, please also come help us make a minyan Friday evening at 6:30 and Saturday morning at 9 or thereafter for our usual Shabbat services, which are not, strictly speaking, Shiva Minyanim, because the public aspects of mourning are set aside for Shabbat. But if you help make a minyan, you'll be helping the family say Kaddish, as well as helping us at Torah reading and all the other important things. Saturday morning is not such a concern in that regard, but especially Friday night. If you come help make the minyan, you'll be doing a mitzvah for the family. So I think those are all the instructions I have for you. Is there something I missed? On our way to the cemetery, we'll pass by the synagogue, where we'll pause and open the door of the hearse and the door of the synagogue. That is a representation of the fact, and it could not be truer of anyone, that Shirley was a bat bait in our synagogue, that Shirley was at home there, was an active participant and a leader among our community. And so you'll notice if you're in the motorcade that we'll stop in front of the synagogue and open the doors in her honor. For those who make your way to the cemetery separately from the motorcade first, let me just point out to you that there's construction on Broad Street, Main Street, whatever it is. So you'll want to use one of the alternate ways to get out there. I'll leave it to you to figure that part out. But just be aware that the road is difficult if you go straight down the usual way to our cemetery. I think that is everything you'll need to know from this point on. So at this point, let me call for our pallbearers. Sid, Jim, Mike, David, Avi, and Aaron. And again, I ask that as the casket makes its way out, that everyone take the opportunity to, for at least 3 steps, to be part of the procession taking the hearse.